If
Wait,
get
Pat, there you go.
All right, well, we will get rolling if everybody's ready. Thanks to you all for joining us. I know it's a busy time, and thanks especially to Pat and Alice of the Fairfax Area League for offering this session. I'm Ann Lloyd Breeden. I'm a member of the Richmond Metro League and a past state board member. Joan Port and Janet Boyd from the state board are also with us tonight. And if you all would like to drop in the chat the league, your local league, and any role that you want to mention that you play there, that would be great. So we'll know who's represented. And also, if there's anything in particular that you would like to ensure we address tonight, you're welcome to mention that in the chat as well. But we'll certainly have plenty of time for you to raise your hand and bring up any topics or questions as we go. This is the second training this week. Last night we had a great session with Irina Van Breda of also of the Fairfax League on new citizen voter registration. If you were not able, I think some of you did join that, so thank you for participating in the double header. If you were not able to join, we will circulate the link to the recording of that, along with Irina's recent senior residence training, and tonight's session will also be recorded and posted on the website, and we'll circulate the link. I think many of you already know our dynamic duo of Pat and Alice. They have co-led the Fairfax area's high school league's high school voter registration for some time, and they are highly successful. I think Fairfax is the largest public school system in Virginia and one of the largest in the country. And their league has registered voters in nearly every high school in the county last year, registering a total of 2,000 new high school voters. As you saw in their bios, they are both retired educators in that system, Pat in reading and language arts and Alice in social studies. Both have also taught at George Mason, among other work in their fields, and Pat is a past co-president of the Fairfax Area League. But they certainly know the ropes inside and out of high school voter registration, and we'll discuss the complete arc of that work, starting with the building of relationships to gain a foothold in the schools to begin with. And I think they plan to pause during their presentation to take questions along the way. And as I said, we'll have time for further discussion at the end. So with that, Pat and Alice, thank you, and I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Ann. We're glad you're here, and we're glad that you want to learn more about high school voter registration. Pat and I have been doing this for 8 years, and we continue to tweak the program every year because our philosophy has always been there's always something that can be improved. And while we're sharing what we do for your consideration, we recognize that not every community and school system is Fairfax. And this is what works for us. But first and foremost, you have to look at your community and know what your community needs are and decide what might be appropriate for your community, because Virginia is a very large state. So, and as Ann mentioned, we'll be pausing throughout the presentation, but also feel free to post questions or comments in the chat box as well. Next slide, Pat. So we've divided our agenda into 4 big buckets, as you can see here. And probably the first one that is going to be most important to you is getting started. Next slide. This is one of the things that we hear most often when we talk to people about voter registration and what we do. How do you start? Where do you go? And in Fairfax, we continue to grow our presence in schools every year. As I said, Pat and I have been doing this for a while. And when we first started, we were not in very many schools. And so as word got out and as we started establishing relationships, because that is first and foremost, the most important thing you can do is to establish relationships with your schools. This could be, start small. We are constantly doing it because people are changing all the time. So that's something that impacts us. But start small and think about who do you know that is in schools that might be teaching high school government or might be teaching high school seniors, not just government. Is it a teacher? Is it an administrator? Is it a school board member? Is it a parent on a PTA? Are you a parent on a PTA that you could then bring up a PTA meeting to say, hey, I hear there's this program out there. I would like, have you guys can we bring that to our school? Again, start small. Because with that one teacher or one person, that's going to get your foot in the door. And it may only be one classroom, or it may be one school if you have more than one school in your system. But again, and it may not be all teachers, because all teachers don't necessarily want to do that. The other biggest thing we can say is to be flexible. Listen to the educators, but be flexible about what you are proposing or what you're offering. And again, instructional time for teachers is precious, and they're very protective of it. So what are they willing to let you do? And we've tried to get into some schools and just can't get our foot in the door. And then we had a parent who was a parent in the community who was working in the school food bank that they had there. And in the course of that, she happened to speak to the principal about it. And the principal was like, okay, whatever. And then finally, we were able to do tables during lunch. Wasn't the most productive the first year, but it got us the foot in the door so that the next year we were invited back again. So that's why I'm saying start small, be flexible, listen to the educators. What would they like you to do? And provide options. We have 4 options that we offer in Fairfax because, again, our teachers are all over the place with what they'll let us do. We do classroom presentations. Sorry, I live near a train track. Hope that isn't too distracting. We do classroom presentations, and that's our most productive in terms of results for voter registration. And we're going to go through the presentations, show you some about the presentations and stuff a little bit later in the presentation. But we generally let them only max out at 30 minutes. And then even then, sometimes teachers will say, oh, hey, I'm giving a test today. Can you cut out that part and do this part? So again, that idea of being flexible. Large group presentations. This is when we had a school say, how about if we all meet in the lecture hall and every teacher who's teaching government that class period brings their kids to the lecture hall. That way you only give one presentation per class period and you don't have to run around from classroom to classroom. I said, sure, if that's what you want, we'll figure it out. And that presents its own challenges, but it's another option. Another option that some schools, because again, teachers are very particular about instructional time, is table registration. And we've done this in 2 formats. One has been a couple of our schools do a mock model Congress or a model General Assembly, something like that. And as part of that, the kids do whatever they do, either in a cafeteria or a gym, but they have us have a table on the outskirts so that as part of this mock Congress, the kids also have to come to the voter registration table and either get information and then register if they want. Another way we've done table registration is through during the lunch periods, during the lunch blocks, where we will put tables in the cafeteria, set them up, and they'll make an announcement about it. This is not always the most productive because kids want to eat their lunch and socialize with their friends. Also, it's what you'll find is they need their social security number. So that's always a big thing that with table registrations, it's about making sure that that reminder goes out. And then finally, our last option is a virtual presentation, which we have done with our online classes. You don't know how many you get registered, but it's another option and another way to reach out to more students. And as you'll find that later in the presentation, our presentation does include voter information as well. So it's not just registering kids. Next slide, please. So I think I'll pause there and think about the high schools that are in your group. And does anybody have any questions here? Remember, there is a state law that all public schools in Virginia have to offer an opportunity to register to vote. Can't require them to vote. It's an opportunity. And so we always remind any of our communication, we always remind schools that we're supporting them in meeting this state law. Any questions?
So I have a quick, go ahead, someone else first, and then I'll go after that.
Pat, did you have a question?
Yeah, we're new, a new league, and we have relatively speaking, and we have an extremely large territory, including 5 different counties and 2 cities. Total of 24 high schools. And last year we were able to go to 4 high schools, but we don't live in all these. We have 2,165 square miles. So I don't have friends that live in every one of these neighborhoods. And my approach was, and I don't know whether I didn't know how to start the approach, but it was by sending a letter to all of the principals. And I made it very low key. I did mention the state code in very low terms, that we can help you accomplish that. I mean, I kept it very low key. And so I was happy that we did 4 out of the 24, because they're all over the place. And that was in September. We did that in September. And by October, 2 of the schools in one county, they were in the same county, had their school board passed a resolution not to allow third-party groups to come into the schools.
That's really too bad.
Yeah, so it's just kind of, and coming from Fairfax, it's a very different environment.
Yeah,
And so, we are really trying, we really want to, and we are looking to get the biggest bang for our buck with the time that we spend on doing voter registration. Understanding is that the schools are a great resource for that. So that's why we really would like to be able to accomplish this. So comments on my comments.
My recommendation in that particular case is go to schools that accept you. Mm-hmm. And let them see what you're doing, and then just reach out to other schools and forget about those that pass that resolution, because what will happen is that as the parents start talking at, soccer practice or football practice and start mentioning it, then you have parents that start to say, well, how come it's not happening in my school? And you say, well, you have to ask your administrator. We do not go into a school unless we are invited. And so, I would forget about those schools that are in where they pass that resolution, and focus on the other ones. And again, it's starting small. So go to those that want you.
Yeah, the slogan that we use is go with the goers. Go with the goers. And then the word spreads, even though they're in different communities. It's hard. It's hard to fight. It's hard to fight against people that don't. You can't make people do what they don't want to do. and they are nervous about it. And sometimes we have run into resistance, and we're fortunate. And I know, Pat, you used to live up here. Our school board is very supportive, and our teachers, for the most part, are very supportive, but we have had instances with parents that aren't supportive. Not many, but we've had that happen. So you go where you're welcomed, and you hope that the word will spread.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Well, that was mainly what I wanted to talk about, was what to do with the difficult areas, and were there anything creative that we could think about collectively of how to sort of manage those. And I guess I just really don't know, because I never was a teacher, but I was wondering if there are teacher organizations that might be helpful to us. In other words, if we went to their leadership and said, here's what we would really like to do. Can you help us help you guys on how to, work with the students and comply with the statutory requirements. Has anybody ever tried to do something like
Yes.
that?
We did. When I was first vice of Virginia, we got a grant from something, I don't remember, and we sent a letter to pretty much every school in the state where we weren't already there, obviously, where we had the local leads, and we heard bupkis. Now, our attorneys have asked us, the attorneys who represent us, if we would like them to send a letter to schools that, reminding them with more of a legal, thing and whatever. And I've gotten mixed reviews from our local leads. Obviously the ones where they are, Fairfax, Arlington, Richmond, blah, 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 you don't have to worry about it. But, some of the leads were afraid that might be too much.
I agree, Joan. If anything, I would go with PTAs. I would approach the school PTAs, because those parents have the voice, and those parents, if your parents say, I want this, then they're more likely to be listened to.
Right, but you have to remember that there are places where they don't want this. We're in Nova.
Yeah,
wants it.
Sure. And here's the thing. I think one thing that I would suggest, and Alice, you can talk about this, that on the Department of Education website, they do have a PowerPoint about this, and they endorse it, right, Alice?
Yes, we're actually going to address that.
Yeah.
Later in the presentation.
Right. And the other thing is trying to enlist your school board in one way or another, and that is with the school board association, so that, and we'll talk about this later, we have sent letters at the end of the year to our school board, and Alice just did this the other day, talking about our successes in our school district. And they all belong to the school board association. I don't know the name of it. All the school boards in Virginia belong to a school board association. So hopefully that they will share that information with each other. But working with people who are resistant is a difficult task. And I would suggest approaching it in a gentle way, in a positive way, if at all possible, and use the power of persuasion. I said, Donnie, you raised your hand. Donnie.
Yes.
Where?
I'm in Smithfield, and you just said all school boards belong to this association. Our school board withdrew from that state association and have joined the other association.
Yep.
So you have to know what your local politics
Yep.
are. And
Yes.
Yep.
Right.
Yes. And
Yes.
that's why we say start small. It may only be one teacher at one school, and that's okay. We, this past year, had been trying to get into a school, hadn't gotten into the school, we hear nothing. And this teacher, was at a league event, an event that the league was participating in, started talking to the league people and said, hey, will you come to my classroom?
Mm.
So we went and did his classroom, and then he said, I'm going to talk to the rest of my team and get them on board for next year. So again, it's starting small with the one person, and that's where establishing the relationship. Who do you know that can provide that the inroads into one school, one classroom, in a positive way, so they can see what you do, and that it's not something that we're going to, terrorize them, require them to do this, say they have to vote for this, any of that stuff. So, all right, let's go on, Pat.
Okay, so we're going to share with you some of what we do and how we organize it. We have a team and we divvy up the responsibilities, and school actions is something that Alice actually does. Alice, do you want to talk about this slide?
Yes, somebody mentioned this, we start in August when the teachers go back to school. We have, over the years, been able to collaborate with the person in central office who is, responsible for social studies. And so we send a letter to that person every, in August before school starts. And they in turn send the letter to the department chair, not the principal, because the principals are getting tons of mail, in all formats of do this, do that, what about this, what about that, at the beginning of the school year. So he communicates directly with the department chairs. And one of the things that he requires is that there is a teacher who will be the point of contact at each school for voter registration. And it's just a name, and it just gives us a name and an email that we can communicate with. So we wait for that to happen. And while we're waiting for that to happen, we also, that happens via email. We also make paper copies of any kinds of materials that we might, as a local league, produce. For example, we have this pamphlet we call Fairfax Facts. I don't know what else we have. And we put that in an envelope. We give, depending on how big the school is, anywhere from 5 to 10 copies of whatever it is. We also have a timeline of voting rights that we produce. We make copies of that, along with a cover letter saying, here's the state law. Here's the reference to the state law, and we are here to support you. Here are some options and how we can support you. We look forward to working with you. Please contact. We hope you find these election voting materials, not necessarily just election materials, but voting materials helpful. Please contact us if you need anything. And we send that to every school, whether they have contacted us or not, and we send it to the department chair. So therefore, it's getting closer to the teachers. In some of these schools that are large, if it gets sent to the principal's busy, it's got all the contents and whatever, it never gets to the teachers. And so that's why we send it to the department chair, who will then send it to the teachers. The other thing we do with schools is that we post social media notices saying, hey, did you know League of Women Voters is doing this? Or League of Women Voters is going to be at this school on this day. Don't forget, we'll see you there. Are we coming to your school? If not, contact us. And when we do that, we tag the schools. So either in Facebook or Instagram, those are the two that I know. I don't know what other they did it. But we tag the school and we tag the school PTA, because in a lot of cases, that's where parents have said, oh, okay, I like this. We need to do this. We also then reach second, that's in the fall, in the fall, with the beginning of the school year, August, September. Then we reach out again to them, either just before the winter break or just after the winter break, and say, hey, second semester, keep us in mind as you plan for the second semester. Again, here are our options. You know, we're here to help you. So we do all of that to every school. Then there are some schools that we've been to in the past and they don't contact us again because maybe our person who was the champion at their school has moved on. So we'll reach out to those schools individually to say, hey, we've been at your school in the past. We haven't heard. Would you like us to come? Again, not a low pressure, but reminder. And oftentimes they do invite us back. And then so that's all with every school. And then as we schedule schools, and I'll talk a little bit about scheduling in a bit, we send an email confirmation to each school's point of contact or the teacher who asked us to come prior to our visit, saying, we're coming on this day, we're looking forward to it, blah, blah, blah. And please remind your students to have their Social Security number. This is the biggest issue we find, is the kids don't have Social Security numbers. If they want to register online, they need a driver's license. And I don't know about your area, but not as many kids are getting driver's licenses or as it's used to. So we do it all in paper and ask the school to let their administrator know what's happening, remind kids, and there's a program called Remind where they send out notices about homework and stuff like that. And finally, also to notify parents, and they usually do it through that way. So that we're very transparent. We're not here to force it. We label it, when we do classroom presentations, as education. So that's our lot of communication with schools. Pat, you want to go into how we organize our volunteers?
Yeah, so each school then, well, we have Alice, you can tell, Alice is our main communicator with the schools. And then I am the main communicator with the volunteers. And so
Next slide.
There.
Yeah, there you go.
It flipped out. So I send information to the volunteers about the schools, and using the information from Alice, I develop a schedule for each school. So usually we have 2 shifts at a school, a morning shift and an afternoon shift. So people our volunteers aren't there all day, except
unless they want to be.
Unless they want to be, but they can sign up for half a day. And they sign up on Sign Up Genius, which is it is a free program, but you can also get the paid for version. And then we also designate somebody who is the lead volunteer at each school, and the lead volunteer then is a person in charge of that school. And we found that to be helpful. So I communicate with the lead at each school. And then the other thing that we do is we train and coordinate with our volunteers, so that we offer training, because we want the volunteers, when they arrive at the school, to know what they can do or should do and what they should not do. And that is important in many ways. So we do that ahead of time. Occasionally we have somebody show up at a school who's a brand new volunteer that hasn't been trained, and we do it at the school, but we really prefer to do it ahead of time. Then the other thing, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, what you'll find is when you get the schedule from the school, They usually have some class periods where there are more teachers than others, and that's why we can set the shift for the volunteers based on the number of classes during each class period.
And sometimes we have to add, I mean, there's things like lunch schedules, special events. I mean, things happen, but we try to have that all organized and set up ahead of time. Then we also have a steering committee. Oh God, I keep flipping this, the thing before I mean to. So we have a steering committee. Alice and I are on it, Camille, and we have other people. We have about 4 to 5 people that are also on it. Arena is part of this. We meet periodically, at least during election season, probably every other week, generally at least once a month. So we plan ahead of time. We talk about our schedule. We order or get things printed that we need so that we have enough materials. The steering committee, I think, is really an important piece, because we also then critique ourselves afterwards. What could we do better? Do we need to change our PowerPoint? Do we need to change our method of operation? Doing this helps us a great deal. The steering committee
also divides up the work.
Absolutely. Because we'll talk about that, but Alice mostly is the contact with the schools. I'm mostly the contact with the volunteers. Camille works with our high school students who want to get credit, or we call them interns or volunteers at the high school level. We had somebody that was on our steering committee that did all of our social media material. Unfortunately, she's the person moving to Michigan. We're so sad, but we're looking for somebody else that could take that spot. We recruit volunteers. We provide training for the classroom presenters and the assistants. It's particularly important for the classroom presenter. We'll talk about that job in a minute, but also for the classroom assistants, so that they know what we would like them to do and they're prepared when they walk into a classroom. And we develop social media materials. We post that on Facebook. I know kids don't use Facebook, but their parents do, particularly their mothers.
Instagram and Twitter too.
We use Instagram. We, in the past, have printed posters for the school. This year, we didn't do that. We made the posters or the flyers, and we sent them electronically to the school so that they could print them if they wanted to. And many schools did, and then they had these flyers posted around the school, reminding students of the days that we were going to be there, and most importantly, that they need their social security number if they're going to register to vote. As Alice said, that is the biggest problem that we face. So then we have this classroom lead person. So the classroom lead brings the materials that we need from our office to the schools. There's usually 2 big bags, because we go to a school virtually for, in most cases, 2 days because of the school schedules. So the classroom lead, the school lead, brings all those materials to the schools. And the classroom lead also collects and organizes the voter registration forms from the school, including the late forms. In other words, we are there at the school for 2 days, but sometimes the kids take the form home to complete. They didn't have their social security number. Some of them, their parents have duly impressed upon them never to share your social security number with them, with anybody else. And they're concerned about that. So we say, you can take that home. Take it home, talk to your parents and bring it home and give it to your government teacher. And we go back to the school and collect those forms. The lead is in charge at the school and coordinates everything at the school with the volunteers. The lead also enters the data. I don't know if every Office of Elections does this, but our Office of Elections, we have to give them the forms in alphabetical order by last name, and also an Excel spreadsheet of all the names typed in alphabetical order by last name. And then that person is responsible for taking the Excel spreadsheet and the forms to our local office of elections and returning the materials back to the office or wherever she got them for in the first place. The school lead often also volunteers as a presenter at the school. Our school lead is often an experienced volunteer who can kind of solve problems. The classroom, the volunteers come back. There was an issue with the classroom. I mean, you might be surprised at some of the issues that we've faced.
Schools are
and
closing
maybe
early.
not.
What do we do?
Pardon?
Schools are closing early. What do we do?
Yes. Schools are closing early. What do we do? That happened to us in a couple of years ago. A student has an issue with filling out the form, and it's a kind of a private issue. So what do we say?
So I noticed that Joan wrote in the chat box to highlight all the required information on the form. As you can see here on this slide, we have an example of the forms that we give out. And I will say that we give a form to every student because we consider this part of voter education. And so we do not ask if they're a citizen or not. And so we give a form to every student so they can see what kind of information is required and they have the opportunity. If they choose, and then we tell them, if you choose not to register and you are not required to, just turn in the form blank at the end. And so a lot of kids, and so then we'll go around afterwards, during our presentation when we're the forms, and we'll say, you know, do you want to register? Do you want to take the form home? Do you want to turn in it? And a lot of times, kids that feel awkward about whether they're citizen or they don't want to register will say, I'll take the form home and never bring it back. That's okay. That is perfectly okay. We have had volunteers say, well, let's take their names. No. It is perfectly okay to, if they want to say, I'm taking it home, okay, fine. Just remember to bring it back to your teacher. If not, if they say, no, I don't want to register, then say, okay, that's fine too. Again, not being judgmental, cannot force.
So the presenter role. The presenter is the person who in the classroom is in charge of that classroom. So when our typical presentation is 25 minutes or no more than 30 minutes. However, sometimes we have to make timing adjustments. You go in a classroom and sometimes the teacher tells you ahead of time. Sometimes it happens you walk in the classroom, the teacher says, I'm giving a test today and really I need the time. So can you cut it short? And gives us like 10, 15 minutes. In that case, we start in the middle, we skip part of our presentation, the history part, and we go right into the voter, how to fill out the form. So it depends. You might know it, the presenter might know ahead of time or they might not, but they have to be flexible enough to make a change right on the day. We also have developed a script to go with our presentation, and we want our presenters to follow the script. It does not mean that they have to read it word by word, but we discourage them having anecdotes about, oh, the first time I went to vote, or my kid went to vote and this happened, or, you know, stories like this. They're interesting to the presenter. They're not that interesting to the students. And we have a limited amount of time in the classroom. So we encourage the presenters to use the script we've developed. They can use their own words. They don't have to memorize it, but to stay on target. The presenter in the classroom directs the assistants. So kind of going over the material, the
When to
requirements
hand
ahead of
out the
time.
forms.
Yes, because we don't want the presenters, I mean, the assistants, to hand out the voter registration forms the minute that we walk in the classroom. Because if you do that, the kids start filling them out immediately and they make mistakes. So we do the beginning part, and then the presenter asks the assistants to hand out the forms, maybe hand out any other materials. Then when the students are filling out the forms, we'll go over that. That's when they can walk around and look at the forms. At the end, the presenter is responsible for reviewing the voter registration forms for correctness and legibility with the classroom assistants before the data is entered. We make a big deal about legibility because the Office of Elections has to take this material and type it in. And if they can't read the student's handwriting, which I have to say is generally pretty bad, we ask them to print, but again, that is all reviewed before we enter the data. Now let me go to what the classroom assistants do, and then you can see what how we handle that part. So the classroom assistants, generally we have 2 per classroom. We could do it with 1. We prefer 2. In a pinch, the classroom teacher can help us out. They sign up for time slots on Sign Up Genius. Remember, I said the lead teacher brings these 2 big bags of materials to the school. Then the first thing that the classroom assistants do is organize the materials out of these big bags into classroom sets. So each classroom will have a set. And we have something that we call a classroom cover sheet. And that is a sheet of paper that has a teacher's name, the time, how many kids were in the room. That always stays with the voter registration forms from that classroom. That's because if we get back to our workroom and we can't read a student's name, is it ROJOS, ROGAS? What is it? We can go back to the classroom teacher and say, what is the student's last name? Spell it for me. And we cannot, of course, write on the voter registration application form, but our Office of Elections allows us to write it on a sticky and place it on the form so that when they get the form, it is spelled in a way that they can enter it, they can read it. And it helps us organize to double check things. So they complete the classroom cover sheet. They follow the directions of the presenter about where you're going to, when you're going to give out the classroom form, the voter registration forms. While they give out the classroom registration forms, they can walk around and answer questions. Kids may have a question that they don't want to say to the whole class, and it maybe is disruptive. Typical question, one question is about gender. Another question is often, at least in our area, I'm not quite sure what address to put down because, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I live at this address. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I live at this address. It's one with the parent, dad, one with the mom. What address should I put down? The answer to that is you talk to your parents and decide. So they do that and they collect the material. While they're walking.
Also, I just want to mention here, Pat, it's important that by state law, you have to give them a receipt.
Yeah, we're going to get to that, Alice.
Oh,
So,
okay.
While you're walking around, you can also see that someone's scribbling with a purple pen.
Or a pencil.
Or a pencil, typically a girl with a purple pen, typically a kid. Any kid with pencil, even though you've gone over, they can use just blue or black ink. And then you can stop them right then and there and they can fix it. Then they double check all the forms and they alphabetize them by last name. But here are our no-nos.
And when when they're doing the double checking and alphabetizing, that's usually outside the classroom.
Yeah, we're going to go over that too. Yeah, we're going to go over that too. So The no-nos inside the classroom are engaging in side conversations with the kids while the presenter is presenting, because this stops the kids from hearing the directions. Sometimes the volunteers are very excited to be there with high school kids. They love that, but we discourage these side conversations. But when they have conversations with the kids is when they're walking around and the kids are filling out the forms and helping them do that. They also cannot share personal information or opinions with the students. Opinions, these are high school kids. They will say, well, who did you vote for? Or who are you going to vote for? Are you a Democrat? Are you a Republican? You cannot answer those questions. You say, you know, this is my private opinion. Ballots are secret, and I'm not sharing that information with you. Of course, we go over, you can wear league materials, but you cannot wear anything partisan while you are doing voter registration. In Fairfax County, we have a policy where parents can opt their children out of having their picture taken. So we cannot take pictures or videos of students unless the teacher initiates it, because the teacher knows who in the classroom can have their picture taken or cannot have their picture taken. So at the beginning of this presentation, you saw a picture of our volunteers with a couple of kids. The teacher said, those kids, you can take a picture of those kids. That is really, really important, because that will get us kicked out of schools if we do that. And as Alice said earlier, we do not pressure students to register. It is their opportunity to register. Some of these kids cannot register because they're not citizens, but we don't want that information shared. Some of them are military students, students in military families, and they're not going to register in Virginia. They're going to register in their home state. Some of the kids have been told, do not ever share your social security number with anybody. And there are still students who are very impressed with their parents' rules, and they will take the form home and fill it out. So those are the things that we really stress, is the things that we cannot do in schools. Any questions or comments so far about this part? And then we'll go on. Joan?
I just wanted to add a couple things that we do in Arlington that have been very successful, and this was started by Don Gurney and Kathy Matusiak, is he'll have like 6 kids or 7 kids stand up. And then he says, okay, you sit down. Okay, those 3 didn't register to vote. And then, okay, you and you sit down. They registered to vote, but they didn't go vote. And then they're like, okay, so the one person standing is going to make the whole decision for you. And that really gets them. And the other thing that we found that gets them is, we'll say, who's the largest voting bloc, the most reliable voting bloc? And they're like, oh, you guys, you know, you baby boomers. Like, yes. Who's the largest voting bloc right now? And they're like, well, it's you guys. They're like, not anymore. It's you guys. And if you guys would just vote, you would rule this country. And they kind of look at you like, wow. And then they start filling them out again. So it's kind of interesting how they've, you know, worked, you know, they've come up with the things. And I'm sure you guys do it too, but I just wanted to throw those out as 2 very effective ways.
Yeah, we have done that in the past. We didn't do that this year, but we have done that, something like that in the past. Something I do, but you've got to be careful about time, is sometimes if I have a male teacher that I know is willing, is that we've got a relationship with and he can kid around with, I'll say to the kids, if we were living in the late 1700s, early 1800s, who in this room could vote? And the answer is nobody except Mr. Johnson. And then we say, now, do you agree with everything that Mr. Johnson says? And they go, no. And so we said, you know, it's a whole same idea that people are, some people can vote, other people cannot vote. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, we'll go on. Scheduling.
So
Alex.
as we've mentioned, we've been doing this for a while, and so we've had a lot of lessons learned over the years, so to speak. So I'd like to mention just two of the big ones, and then Pat's going to have a couple as well. Scheduling. When you schools invite us to say, "Hey, I'd like you to come," and you're like, "Great. What days do you want?" Our schools in Fairfax, our high schools are on what it's called an AB block. That means that there's 8 class periods, 4 meet one day, 4 meet the next day. So generally, if we're doing classroom presentations and even lunchroom tables as well, we're in a school 2 days a week, 2 days. It's best to have them be consecutive. You want to look at the school calendar to avoid days like Mondays, especially after a break, because then your reminders about Social Security numbers often get lost in the wind. The same thing after a holiday break. So
And
you
what
want to
did we
make
learn? Can I interrupt? What did we learn about the most important day to avoid this year?
prom day.
Do not schedule it the day of the prom. The kids are not interested in registering to vote. The girls are all wondering about their hair and their makeup, and the boys
If they're
are
even in
wondering
school, if they're
Yeah.
even in school.
if they're even
So,
in school. Avoid
right,
prom
right.
day or the day before prom. Not worth it.
So, so then so you want to look at the school calendar, the district calendar, but then you also want to look at the school schedule. For example, in Fairfax, we have a day called PSAT Day, where I think it's 10th graders are taking the PSAT, and then the whole school schedule is all discombobulated. So there are some times when we will remind teachers to say, "Oh, by the way, did you know that this is how, oh, I forgot all about it." So you do want to make sure you look at the calendar. The other thing is to look at the school schedule. As we mentioned before, we schedule our volunteers usually 2 shifts. And that's based on the individual teacher schedules, which we will get from our point of contact. And, usually they have at least one class period where they're planning. You may have one government teacher during that class period, or you may have up to 5 or 6 government teachers during that class period. And so that helps us determine if we need 1 team or 2 teams, and how do we adjust it that way. So you want to really look at the schedule and the timing. Now, with the timing, I mentioned that we are in each school 2 days because we're on an AB block, and we adjust them based on the teacher request, as Pat had said before. A maximum of 30 minutes for classroom. This allows us to have each team do 2 or even 3 if we absolutely have to during each class block. This also is important to follow the script. And as Pat mentioned, and you'll be able to see it. I'll mention it as we go through our presentation, where we can cut off based on student questions, teachers saying, "I got a test, just give me the basics," whatever you need to do there. So it is important to be flexible, and this is hard for some of the people, especially if they're a new volunteer, to be able to adapt on the fly. Pat?
So we post things on social media before we're visiting, Instagram and Facebook. We also, this year, what we did is we sent the schools the flyers, and they themselves printed them and posted them around the school. And that is very helpful because it reminds the kids. We take pictures of our volunteers and we post this on social media and in our league newsletters and in our in our email. And that gets other volunteers interested in doing this. We send thank you emails to teachers And that is really important because they love those thank you letters and they send them to whoever is their person that evaluates them, because they can say, this is something extra that I did. We also send thank you emails to the principal, because then the principal, even though the principal did none of the work, the principal can send that to his or her boss and claim, you know, this is what my school is doing. And they love that part.
To meet the state law.
Yes, to meet the state law, this is what we're doing. We have only recently started to do this. We have invited school members to come and observe us working with students. And some school members have done that. And it's really important if a school member comes to do something like that, you take their picture and send it to them. They love that. And they send it in their newsletters to the people that they represent. And we also, this year, Alice just did it yesterday, I think, or today, or the day before. We send a letter to the chair of our school board saying, this is what we did for you this past year. We visited this many schools. We registered this many kids. We worked with this many teachers. And we got a lovely letter back from our school board chair saying that thank you for her letter. And she was going to distribute it to the rest of the school board.
Just to get the league's name out there, and what you're doing as much as you can, because it kind of feeds on itself.
Yes, yes. What supplies do we use? You saw that we've got the voter registration forms highlighted, and we package them in sets of 30 ahead of time. We have a packing party. We have blue and black pens. We try to get them back from the kids after we leave the classroom. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not. We're always buying new pens. And the kids don't have pens mostly. And if they do, they're red pens, pink pens, turquoise pens. So you really need a lot of pens. The classroom cover sheets that we use, we talked about those. The Go Vote cards, you can see pictures of them here. This is a double-sided card the size of a business card. If you don't have money, this is not essential. We didn't do it when we started out. But on one side, there's a QR code that goes to Vote 411. On the other side, there's a QR code that goes to a link tree. And the link tree goes to other sites. Typically, they're not our sites. They are Board of Election sites or Office of Election sites. And we give these cards to everybody, whether they registered to vote or not, because we say, you know, you can keep this card in your wallet forever, because this card will always have the information that you need so that when you go to vote, you've got the information that you need. We also print receipts. We don't ask the kids to tear off the bottom of the voter registration forms because that's a pain in the neck. They rip the form. We have a receipt that we use, and we've got it approved from our local Office of Elections. If you do that, I think you'd have to get it approved by your Office of Elections to say if they would let you do that. What I forgot to put on the supplies is that we also give every kid that registers, or if they say to us, I registered online or I registered with my parents, we don't say anything about that. We just give them a I registered to vote sticker. I was an elementary teacher. Elementary kids love stickers. I've discovered that high school kids love them too. They love those I registered to vote stickers. They really want one. And sometimes they put it on the back of their phone. They put it on themselves. They put it on their notebook. They are a big hit.
One other thing that I would just mention with regards to supplies is that we also have colored folders so that when we go into a classroom, on the cover sheet, we say what color the folder is. And then when we finish in that classroom, we stuff everything in that folder and go to the next classroom or go to the teacher workroom where we're organizing our stuff. But it is that color folder and the name on the cover sheet that allows us then, as we're checking, as we mentioned before, if there's any questions, which teacher do we go back to?
And that is really, I can't stress enough, that's real, and it gives us kudos from our Office of Elections, because they are so happy that when they get our voter registration forms, there is seldom something that they have to reject or that they have to question because they can't read it or the information is not there. So those colored folders and keeping all of that intact so that you have where the students, what classroom that student was in, so that you can question the teacher and get the information that's needed. It's really been so helpful. Anybody else have a
I was just going to add, when we talk about establishing relationships, that's also establishing a relationship with your local Office of Elections. At one point, our Office of Elections used to go into schools. And now, because they are so strapped with staff and whatever, when they get a call from a school, they will refer that school to us instead. So it's really, and I know our voter registration person meets with them in the summer to say, okay, after July 1st, what changes have occurred? Is there anything we need to look for? And ask about each of ask about high schools. Is there anything else we need to do or change based on the previous year? So that's also another piece I'd just like to mention. Don't forget coordinating and working with and establishing relationship with your local Office of Elections.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll go on. Alice, this is yours.
As we mentioned before, this is a state law saying that every public school in Virginia must offer students the opportunity to register to vote during school time. And so VDOE, Virginia Department of Education, has a PowerPoint that they have posted on their instructional, it's kind of buried under with the state history and social studies standards instructional resources page. So we've got the links here, and that is on the upper left, you'll see that's the cover, that's the first slide of this presentation. It is a short presentation. It does both online and paper. I would suggest you don't have to start from scratch. Use the state presentation as the basis of anything you may do and add to it. And you'll be able to see how I'm not going to link to it. I'm not going to go to it now, but some of it is very similar to what we do, but we've also added a lot to it. So, when somebody says, oh, you can't do that, here is the state saying, here's a resource you can use. So that I think is important to let people know that you're using State Department of Education materials. And then there is this Everyday Civics website, which is where you can find it. And there's a whole bunch of other materials. If you want to include anything else in schools on civic education, government, both with the schools or even within your own league, there's quite a bit of material on that page on Everyday Civics. So what Pat and I would like to do now is just to quickly go through our presentation so you can see how it is organized. And it's really divided into several different sections. The first section is the history of vote. We give an introduction. Then, no, Pat, back. We have an introduction, then we go into the history of voting, the importance of voting, and walk the kids through the process. So here is our open introductory slide. And this is the introduction, and we emphasize the fact that we are nonpartisan. Okay, Pat, next. So then we have a slide, we talk a little bit about women's suffrage and how it ended up with the 19th Amendment giving women the right to vote. Because we begin by asking the kids who had the right to vote when the United States was first founded. And they all know from their history classes, and I even give them a hard time. Oh, come on, make your history teacher proud. It's the, white landowning men who could vote. And so by leaving out a whole bunch, these are the groups we want to emphasize. So we go through a little bit about women's suffrage. This is why our script is so important, because you can go on and on about all of these topics. Next, we go to civil rights and the Civil Rights Act of the 24th Amendment and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and how this was even though freed blacks after the Civil War won the right to vote, they all know about Jim Crow because they've studied Jim Crow laws in their history class. And then how we got to the 24th Amendment, which outlawed poll taxes and literacy tests, which many of them know. Some teachers will even have the kids go online and take a literacy test. So again, depending on where the teacher is at. And then the last topic we'll mention is the 26th Amendment, which lowers the voting age from 21 to 18, which directly impacts them. So this is our history of voting rights. And some teachers, depending on when we present in their course curriculum, they may say, skip the voting rights, skip the history part, because they know all that, just get to the meat of it. So then we go into next, why people vote and how every vote matters. And this is part of what Joan mentioned, that every vote makes a difference. When we emphasize and point out the 2017 election here in Virginia, where out of more than 23,000 votes that were cast, the name was picked out of a bowl. And, that's important. So every vote does matter. Then we go into every election matters. And, again, every 4 years, people get hyped up because there's so much hoopla around the presidential election. But it is we try to emphasize that it is the state and local elections that directly impact them. So one of the things that we have started doing is we will ask the kids who in the classroom is a taxpayer. And usually you'll have the teacher raise their hand, the volunteers will raise their hand, maybe a couple of kids, if they have a job, will raise their hand. Then I'll ask who's been to Chick-fil-A or Chipotle or whatever the local restaurant is. And everybody's hand raises up. And I'll say, you're all taxpayers. And we'll also ask, who puts gas in a car? Who has ever put gas in a car? And most of them will raise their hand and will say, you're a taxpayer because there's fuel taxes. So then the question becomes, so then we say, every time you purchase a product, and depending if there's a meal tax, could be that too, these are taxes that go to the state and local governments. So then the question becomes, well, what happens to that money? Who decides what's going to spend it on? And this is where you get into, okay, what Joe was saying, it's the voters. Well, who are the voters? Who's the largest voting bloc? Our age, older age group. And when you look at some of these local areas of decision-making, talk about the differences of what's important to people. I always love to say, okay, let's look at parks, rec centers. Don't care about athletic fields anymore because I'm never going to use one. But I do want more books for my library. And they all look at me and laugh like, yeah, we know. I said, well, if you want athletic fields, then get out there and vote and make your voice known. So there are ways that we've worked around this one. Next, Pat. This is one slide we always change because you have to obviously update what's on the ballot. And we also want to reference the fact that there could be other things on the ballot besides just names and for office holders, such as referendums and constitutional amendments, and why it's important to do the research ahead of time, because words matter and how things are worded. Next, Pat, you're up.
Okay, so then
Okay, stop. I'm going to stop there. Sorry.
Okay.
So if they want us to cut even more, we will start with that slide of what's on the ballot,
Mhm.
and then
Yes.
then continue.
So here is where we say the qualifications for voting, and we go into government. We go into classes where there are seniors, but occasionally there is a kid in there who is not old enough, and that with the change in the law a few years ago, that student can register to vote because they can pre-register. If we ask, are there anybody here from a military family? And if there are kids in a military family, we go over this slide. Some of our schools have many kids from military families. Other schools do not. So, but if there are, then we talk about, if you're part of a military family, you are eligible to register to vote in your home state. And this is a conversation that you should have with your parents. And then we go through, right here is where we ask the volunteers to hand out the paper application forms. And we have them highlighted. Our Office of Elections has told us that we cannot say you do not have to fill out gender. We say to the kids, put something in for gender, whatever you want to put there. And if a kid says, I don't want to put something in for gender, you say you can skip it. But we've been told from our office, and I don't know if this is across the state, but our office says they don't want us handing in a whole set of forms where we've said you don't have to do this, because it's still there. But they are not eliminated if they do not fill in something for gender. In our population of kids, we have to say to kids, if your last name has 2 parts, you have to put both parts in. A typical problem is kids put in an initial for their middle name. The Office of Elections does not like it. They're supposed to fill in their complete middle name. But occasionally there are children who, in our population of kids, have only a letter of the alphabet for their middle name, and then that's acceptable. We kind of sometimes throw in, there was a president of the United States that only had a letter of the alphabet for his middle name. Actually, sometimes a teacher will say, well, there were 2. Well, really the one was Truman. He had S for his middle name. We don't know why. His mother, there are theories about that. But Ulysses S. Grant, he put that S in there because he wanted to be U.S. Grant. That really wasn't his legal name, but that is another example. I'm going to go back. Our Office of Elections likes to have the kids fill in email or phone number. So we highlight that. That is optional, and we tell the kids that. But if they fill in one or the other, if there is a problem with their voter registration form, the Office of Elections could contact them and get that resolved. While they're filling out this form, we ask the volunteers, the classroom helpers, to walk around, look at what their kids are doing. They will find somebody who inevitably, there's somebody with a pencil, even though we've gone over that. To say to them, they can take a pen and they can trace over their pencil. They can, we can ask them to write legibly, but we do notice that some kids are incapable of writing legibly. And so we can take a sticky, print on the sticky and put it on the voter registration form so that the Office of Elections can read it. And this is the current form. The form was changed this year, but it was not changed on the front. So we're still using last year's form. The back part, I can't remember what was changed on it, but it's still okay to use it. We say you can skip these parts. Sometimes if we have time, we explain why they can be skipped. But we do tell them that they could volunteer if they are 18 to work at the polls. If they're under 18 in our area, they can work as a page, as a volunteer. And then we go down to the part where they write their signature. Their signature is accepted. I know that they have terrible handwriting. We can't deal with that. The Office of Elections accepts the signature in whichever way it was written by the student. In whichever way. As it looks like a mess to you, don't worry about that.
Pat, what was our most surprising signature we had this year?
I debated whether I should share that with them. We had a kid.
You guys won't believe it.
He drew a picture of a cat for his signature. And I talked to the student about that, and he argued, I thought it was going to be a girl. His first name was ambiguous. I couldn't tell. It was a great big hunking guy. And he said, that is my signature. And I thought, I'm not arguing with you. So, so we submitted it to the Office of Elections. And I was with Irina when she went to the Office of Elections, and they said it caused much merriment down there. And they submitted it to the state. So it's the state's problem. I don't know what happened. So you accept the signature, whatever it is. The date, we try to write the date on the whiteboard or the blackboard so they have the date correct. Sometimes what they do is they put their birth date down there. No, it's today's date. And if they put a date, an incorrect date, that's not generally a problem. But if they predate it, it is a problem because these voter registration forms have to be submitted to the Office of Elections within 10 days. So if they say that we were there last week, but we're here this week, it could be problematic. We ask them not to tear off the application, the receipt at the bottom, and we give them a receipt. And that was approved by our Office of Elections.
And we do that really for time purposes because it's just easier for that.
And I think at the end, we tell them that they're going to get notification from the Office of Elections within 30 days. We tell them that. And our Office of Elections is good about letting the kids know who pre-registered, because I have a friend whose son pre-registered in the fall. He was not eligible to vote. And she called me and told me the day when after the election, he got the form, the card in the mail. So they did follow up. And then we asked them to they can go to Vote 411 when they keep it on that Go Vote card, because they can get this information. And this is the information that they will need. There is lots of information that they need. They need information about absentee. You just can't tell them all the information they need. So we give them a resource where they can go to get the information, but you just can't go over everything.
And those are linked to our Office of Elections website, so that when they update it, then it's automatically updated. So they'll get the latest information. And so we end with what are your options to vote? Because some of the kids may be away at college or in the military when the election holds. So we very quickly go over voting in person early, requesting an absentee ballot, and then, of course, voting in person on election day. And one of the things we mentioned is when you vote in person early, you can go with your friends and then celebrate afterwards, because you don't have to go to your assigned polling place, which they're very surprised at. We talked to them about being a voting advocate for not their friends, their family, by sharing with the Go Vote cards. And we conclude with the fact that as a US citizen, no matter where they are in the world, even if they're into the ocean, under the ocean in a submarine, as a US citizen, they have the right to vote. That people have fought for and even died for this right to vote, and it's not something to be taken for granted. They need to use it and use it wisely. So what we try to get through that whole idea of the history of voting rights is that it was a slow process, and it took people standing up and protesting for people to get that right, and to try to really emphasize that to kids. So you saw a quick overview of our presentation, and what we do is depending on where it is, what the school has asked for, we can skip the history part and go right into, we can skip the importance of voting part and then go right into just walking them through the voter registration ballot application if needed. So we do have that adaptation there. So that's the end of our presentation. Do you all have any questions? I believe Anne is going to send out the recording, and we are going to share the presentation with her. And I'm not sure what she's gonna do with it after that.
We will circulate the slides and probably also post them on the state website if that is agreeable to you too. Go over voting with your friends. I'm reading a comment in the chat. Go over voting with your friends again, especially if out of precinct.
Oh, on early voting day, you can vote with your friends at any site. If you, at least in Fairfax, on early voting, you can go to any polling place. So
because not every assigned election day polling place has early voting.
Right.
So go anywhere in the county or the city, if you're in Fairfax City, and go with your friends and make it a big,
make it a celebration. Yeah.
Would it be possible, Pat, for you guys to make available a good version, a clear, clean version of those cards that you send out, so other leagues may be able to use that and just put their own league in there?
The Go Vote cards, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can take a picture of them.
Yes.
So in precinct is mandatory on election day. Absolutely. On election day, you have to vote where you are assigned. But on early voting, you can, at least in Fairfax, you can go anywhere.
Yep.
Anywhere, any polling place in your county or your jurisdiction.
Or what they call satellites, just use the right terminology on that. And the registrar's office is always available during that 45-day period.
Yes.
The satellites may not, but they should go onto their registrar's website because that provides the details of exactly where the satellites are and what time the satellites are open.
Right.
Also information with regard to the drop boxes, because the drop boxes are all over, not so much in Fairfax. Fairfax doesn't have very many drop boxes, but
no, we do. Yeah, you can vote at the satellites. You can drop your absentee ballot.
Right, but you don't have other places.
No, not other places.
9 of them, which is
right. Yeah, so you have to find out what your jurisdiction does. One of the things I wanted to say is you might find out, like the urban myths that are in your student population. A myth in our population that we discovered several years ago is that kids who are entering the military straight out of high school, going into the military, they would say to us, well, I can't register to vote because I'm going in the military, so I can't vote. I don't know how that—
I'm going to be in boot camp. I'm going to be in boot camp.
Yeah, so I don't know how that got started. But my husband has a friend who's a master sergeant in the Marines, which I am given to understand is a big deal. We're not military people. And so the master sergeant said to me, oh, don't worry. They will make sure that these kids not only can vote, but will vote. So we try to address that each time, because that seems to be something that has spread around Fairfax County, and we just don't know how it got started. Anything else that people want to say? As you can tell, Alice and I are very enthusiastic about doing this. We enjoy it very much. We have a lot of volunteers that also enjoy it. And Beth was on here a minute at the beginning, but she's not on now, I think. Beth Johnson, and she is one of our volunteers. So we have volunteers that have been with us a long time and continue to sign up to do this.
All right,
Okay.
well,
Thank
thank
you.
you
Wait, I
so
think-
much. That was fantastic.
I think Pat has her hand up, Pat Worth.
And
Okay.
I just wanted to say that I can't tell you how beneficial this was to me and the things that I've learned. Of course, the learning curve never ends and it comes fast and furious. It's almost like it's coming from the White House, so fast and furious. I'm extremely appreciative of this. This was superb. I mean, do a little back patting there, ladies, because this was
Thank you.
exemplary, and I feel like you have saved my bacon, because I've been approaching how to get into these schools incorrectly, because I didn't have anybody out here that had ever done it. And I'm very grateful, very, very, very grateful. So thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Pat. And, we all learn from each other. I was with Pat on Saturday, and I learned a lot from her on that day, too.
Wonderful.
Yep, sharing information is the best thing we can do. Okay, thank you very much. And I'll be sending you, I don't know how those extra red marks got in the PowerPoint. They weren't there yesterday, but I will send you the PowerPoint, and probably not till tomorrow.
Okay, but by all means, take the rest of the night off. All right, thank
Oh,
you all
thank you.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right,
bye.
take care. Bye.